I'm going to make you smarter. Turn to the person next to you, say you're going to learn something. Turn back and say it's about time. Today we're doing Brain Fit. I wanted to do this class for a really long time, but finally kind of pulled it together. We've been more focused on, in the past on things like heart disease prevention and diabetes reversal and cancer prevention, because I felt like since 5 out of 6 people end up with those avoidable but life-threatening diseases, what does it have to do with the brain? Well, I became interested in neurology when I was about 13 years old, and I watched my grandfather go through Alzheimer's. And I watched him go from the guy who would come over and pick me up and play with me and run around and interact to someone who didn't know me, and just like he was the Walking Dead. You know, basically, the last couple of years of his life, he wasn't there. And so I became very interested in, why does that happen? What can be done to prevent it? And looked at all the research and everything when it comes to brain research for most of my life has more been about how to prevent neurodegeneration or how to reduce it using things like brain games and things like that. And that's all well and good, but the old school of thought was that the brain, once you had your nerve cells and they died, what happens? That's it. They don't come back. But we're actually learning more and more about what's called neuroplasticity and how to increase dendritic connections, which we're going to go into, how nutrition affects it, how toxins affect your brain, what you can do to stimulate your brain to actually make yourself perform better. And I want to talk to you about where you live. And I think this is cute. The brain's the most important organ you have, according to your brain. If you think about every memory you have, every emotion you have, your ability to focus, to concentrate, to relate to other human beings, everything that you've ever seen, smelled, touched, tasted, all of that data and who you are as an intellect, as an emotional human being, are all stored here. So you live and exist here. When you stub your toe, you don't actually feel the pain in your toe, you feel it here. When you hear beautiful music, you don't hear it here, you hear it here. So your entire existence and how you see the world is right here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if there's one thing that you want to do, it's take care of your brain. And actually, as I've progressed in my knowledge of this, I come to think of our bodies as literally every part is designed to support our brain. That like all of the other organs in our body are there just to make sure that our nervous system can go around the world and do the things that it's got to do. So I want to make sure that this part of you is well preserved, not just so that you don't decline with age when it comes to things like Alzheimer's and dementia, but how can you actually boost your brain at this moment and very easily so that you can perform better. Because I had experiences when I was younger, I could study the night before tests. I got through my entire high school without ever having looked at a book. And did pretty well. When I got into college, though, I left home. And what I also left was good home cooking. And I went to, ramen noodles and everything else, like college kids do. And I noticed a severe decline, no matter how hard I pushed myself. And I would do all-nighters, and I would notice that something wasn't right. I kind of lived in a perpetual brain fog. And so that kind of got me interested in nutrition. And I knew when I was going off to chiropractic school that I was interested in the spine. And I thought of the spine, like many of you do, as, okay, well, when your back hurts or when you get headaches or neck pain, you go to the chiropractor, you get adjusted. But really, I learned about the spine as another extension of the brain. And it's actually a neuromechanical object. So we're talking about that today. So if you didn't know this, Alzheimer's, dementia are actually up by about 55% in the last decade. Okay? So it's really important to understand what's causing it and how it affects us. As a society, they're estimating that $287 billion is spent a year in the treatment, lost income, and family members and how it affects it. So senior homes, when they're dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia patients, can cost anywhere from $3,600 to $5,000 a month. So it doesn't just affect the person who has it, it affects their entire family, whoever's got to be their caretakers. So it can really be a huge anchor for those around you. And I don't know about you, but the last thing that I ever want to be is someone who is dragging everyone else down with me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so the 5 not so early warning signs of a declining brain, meaning by the time you have these, you have some brain deficits already. So rather than waiting until you have these to treat yourself, that's the American way, is waiting until you have symptoms and then treating the symptoms, as opposed to always being vigilant about taking care of the cause of the problem. So you forget where you put things. So you walk into a room, why am I in here? What did I forget? Where are my keys? Where's my, So that type of thing is if you do that consistently, you might have a stressed out, inflamed brain. Number 2, difficulty remembering conversations. Hey, we were just talking about that, or having the same conversation over again. That was one of the things with my grandfather, again, when I was 13. I remember, when I was a little kid, he would tell me a story, and I said, yeah, you just told me that story. And then he would, keep on telling me that same story. And I thought it was just, because he was old, but it turns out that he was dealing with the early onset of Alzheimer's at that point. You forget what you wanted to say, so you're starting something in the middle of a sentence, and you stop, you're stumbling on your words, or you're experiencing regular brain fog. Now, brain fog is just a general term. It's not really a medically recognized term, but it just sums up the feelings of, you're in a fog, you're in a confusion, you're in an altered state. You just feel like you're just not all there. Mental clarity is affected. And, the effects of that can be very frustrating. And so, because the power to exist and your energy is right there, we want to make sure that we take care of that. Right now, if you're 65, got a 1 in 8 chance of going into cognitive decline, but by the time 80, because a lot of that neurodegeneration happens later on, because a lot of people aren't forming new dendritic connections, it's actually 1 out of 2 at that point. So the answer is actually found in our 5 essentials, and that is dealing with maximizing your mind, your nervous system, nutrition, oxygen and lean muscle, and minimizing toxicity. So if you're not familiar with our 5 essentials, get to know them, because it's not a treatment system. It's a healthcare delivery system, because we firmly believe that the healthcare system that exists today is sorely deficient. That it's actually not a healthcare system at all, that it's a sickness care system, that it's a disease treatment model, and rather than waiting for someone to be sick to treat the symptoms of that sickness, we elect in our office to create a framework through which we can deliver true health care. And that's understanding what your cells need. You have 76 trillion cells in your body. You should know what they need and removing what they don't need. It's as simple as that. All right? So the role of stress, and this is in part of Mac's mind. Stress is neither good nor bad. It depends on the amount and how perpetual it is. Right? So if I hold 5 pounds in my biceps, can I hold that indefinitely? No. All right, so even a small amount of stress over an extended period of time eventually is going to overcome my body's ability to deal with it. So if I have a small stress in my life, but I continue to do it over and over and over again, and so the example that I've used at almost every one of my talks, if I have a small stress, I can handle this for an hour or 2, but if I did this for years, what would happen to the cells in my hand? What happens to the cells of your hand if you work out? Okay, you get calluses. That's your body's way of adapting to stress, right? So stress in itself isn't bad. It's how your body's ability to adapt to stress that matters. So what are the things that happen in stress? Well, if you have prolonged stress, it leads to, eventually, if you're not dealing with it properly, things like anxiety, depression, poor decision-making, insomnia, and memory loss. All right, so that's what we're dealing with right now, because you can only handle so much. Because if I have this 5-pound weight, and I have this 5-pound weight, and now someone gives me their 5-pound weights, and I take on the world's 5-pound weights, right? And how many of us do this? We take on burdens that don't belong to us. Say aye. Because we all do, right? And so there's times to understand what is your path in life? What are the things that you want? And so if you were to prioritize all of the things in your life, how many of the things that you're doing are taking you away from the things that matter most to you? Just a thought. Stress causes your brain to literally shrink. By causing inflammation chronically around the brain, your brain goes into a state where it goes into an atrophy state. And so if you're under constant cortisol or sympathetic stress, it causes brain shrinkage. And it's just as harmful as concussions or some of the other things we're going to talk about today. Stress damages your brain-body connection, Many of you already know that there's a deep connection between your brain and your gut, your brain and your immune system, your brain and your muscles. So if your brain is damaged, what part of your body can be affected? Say it. All of it, every single bit of it. So if you have a gut issue, you can have a gut-brain issue back and forth. Right? Your brain is a transmitter. Everyone knows this. It tells your body how to respond to its environment. But your brain's also a receiver. It's constantly receiving data in. And if the information in, so garbage in, garbage out. All right? So your man brain versus your lizard brain. So a lot of people are living in fight or flight. They're living in sympathetic tone. And what happens is you go out of your executive function of your prefrontal cortex and you end up going to the limbic system all the time, the emotional brain, the one that makes bad decisions all the time. And if you're doing that constantly, again, it goes back to the other stressors. Right? So it actually kills your brain cells. It overloads your brain with hormones that are intended only for short term. So those are your too much acetylcholine. There's other things that happen inside your brain that go over and over and over again. That in short periods of time, like I can sprint for 100 meters, but I can't sprint a marathon, and neither can you. And so we want to make sure that we're not overloading our stress and killing our brain cells. And the question is then, what do you focus on? Because stress isn't real for the majority of it. It's our perception of reality. They've done studies on event realities where they'll take two different people and put them in the same event. One person who loves roller coasters, another person who hates them. Put them on the same roller coaster, you do their blood work, God bless you, before and afterwards, and one person will actually be endorphinally, hormonally healthier after that experience, while the other person is sicker. Their immune system's depressed. So what does that mean? It's not the roller coaster's fault, right? If two people are in a relationship and one person loves to argue, loves to fight, really feels like that really kind of gets rid of all of the issues, and we're going to have this argument, and we're going to debate it out and go toe-to-toe, and the other person hates arguing, hates confrontation, one person walks out of there saying, that was great, the other person is dead. Right? I mean, so you have to know in a relationship what actually makes that other person tick as well. And this is not a relationship counseling class, but understanding this, that 92% of stress is worrying about things that are in the future that will never happen, worrying about things in the past that you can't change. Right? So if you're only worried about the true stressors, the ones that are really going to affect your life, you're saving 92% of your energy. So there's ways to take care of that, and again, this is not totally a max mind class, but understanding that your health, your work, your relationships, all of that is a trifecta, and understanding your role in that and planning it. Because you can either have a hodgepodge of other people's philosophies kind of just thrown into you and patchworked in over the course of your life, kind of like what made sense to my teachers or to my parents or to whomever, or you can form your own philosophy and ideology. And make sure that you're creating a framework that makes sense for you and the world that you live in. So some things that you can do to de-stress. Number one, the brain loves consistency. Right? So having morning and evening rituals can be very, very helpful to taming the stress in your brain. Knowing, so like your first half an hour of the day and your last half an hour of the day. And making sure that you're setting yourself up. For some people, it's waking up and getting into emotional and creative state. For some that's meditating, for some that's yoga, for some that's prayer. Do whatever you can do to get yourself separated from the world. Do not immediately reach for your device and get the world programming your brain. You program your brain, or someone else will. There's lots and lots of advertisements, there's lots and lots of news, real or fake, that's trying to get inside your head and stress you out. So remove yourself from that idiocy and create what it is that you want to create. Create your emotional states, because it's just as easy to create depression as it is to create happiness and excitement. Your brain is a muscle, and the more that you do emotions, the better you get at doing those emotions. Right? And motion creates emotion. So one thing that's great to do as a morning ritual is exercise. We'll talk about what I prefer as a form of exercise later on in the talk. But exercising in the morning is one of the best ways to get your brain excited, right? And staying on ritual. Eating healthy foods. Again, if you fail to plan to fail when it comes to foods. And so if you're, well, what am I going to eat? I didn't eat, so then you all of a sudden there's the golden arches. Well, I'm hungry, it's convenient. Nobody makes reservations at McDonald's. You guys know this, right? Ooh, like I can't wait to eat McDonald's on a week from Friday. It happens because we're hungry and it's convenient. So make sure that you don't have convenience when it comes to foods. It matters because you're feeding the cells of your body. When you're going to work, if you have to sit there and drive, since sitting and being lethargic in that position is very bad for your brain, very bad for your emotional state. You can do things like podcasts or music that lights you up or something that keeps you in a good mood. But again, news, I oftentimes listen to comedy on the way to the office, and my team knows how funny I am. I pay them to laugh at that. So, and you can vary things up too. So like if you're bored with your daily routine, there's the opposite end of the spectrum, which is you can just take a plan and say, okay, how many of you say you put down your to-do list, right? So I have to meet with this person here. I've got to be at this doctor's office. I've got to go. Okay, you plan to be here today, right? But do you plan your time to relax? Do you plan your time to say, okay, I'm going to nap there. I'm going to put my, my time to meditate or be in state over here. I'm going to be in gratitude over here, and create the states of your day. At the end of the day, how would you have wanted to feel? What does it mean to have a good experience in that day? This day is going to be gone before you know it. What did you want it to feel like? If you lace all of your days together, that's your life. So rather than just kind of going through it, enjoy it. See how magnificent this is. You're alive, right? So there's self-talk sabotage. You program your own brain, right? Just like others have programmed you, and you have to kind of cast that out and bring in the good. Rather than saying, we have to. I have to do this, I have to do that. I will. Say it positively, right?